Good morning.
Our public schools are for all of the children of all of the people. I am Sandy Whistler from Citizen Advocates for Public Education in Lake Mills. I welcome all of you today, and I affirm that we are gathered here, parents, grandparents, community members, and educational leaders from around our state, because we represent all of the people who call on our legislators to make great public schools for all of our children their priority. With us today are representatives from groups from Green Bay to Kenosha, Mount Horeb to Oconto Falls, Colfax to Manitowoc, and beyond. We represent school districts, grassroots groups, and professional organizations. But mostly, we represent the 870,000 Wisconsin public school children who count on us to advocate for them because they cannot advocate for themselves. With no increase in per pupil spending in the first year of the proposed state budget and a below inflation increase in the second year, Wisconsin will fall below the national average in per pupil spending for the first time ever. And we are being outspent in public education by 45 other states. Yet we know that quality public schools are the heart of our local communities. Maintaining and building on that quality is essential for the strength of our communities and for the strength of our democracy. Adequate and equitable funding is one part of maintaining and building quality public schools. We applaud legislators who have introduced two bills, one to increase special education reimbursement rates and one to lift the revenue caps that stand in the way of local level decision-making and control. These bills do respond to some of the key concerns raised by districts across the state, but they are just the beginning of maintaining and building on the quality of our public schools. What we propose today is what districts and parents all over the state have been asking for all along: a responsible, common sense plan that provides full and fair funding for our public schools. The plan currently on the table cuts funds to public schools and will increase our taxes. But we know that we can meet our schools' needs for a cost of living increase without raising taxes. And we call on our legislators to make this happen as they finalize this budget. Personally, I represent public school advocacy groups from across the state who have traveled to the Capitol today to ask our legislators to fulfill their constitutional obligation to provide tuition-free public schools for all of our children without sectarian instruction. Not only is this a constitutional obligation, we believe funding quality public schools is our responsibility as citizens of our democracy. There are many local grassroots groups represented here today. Some of them have been around for a while. Grandparents United for Madison Public Schools, the Stop Special Needs Vouchers Coalition, the group in Lake Mills, Citizen Advocates for Public Education, formed about 2 years ago. But there are also groups who have just formed in the past couple of months as all of the budget issues arose. They include parents and supporters of the Manitowoc Public School District, Benders for Better Public Education in West Bend, and Support Our Schools from Wauwatosa. From rural districts to suburban districts to urban districts, our members have mobilized to say that all children, whether they live in the inner city of Milwaukee, the suburbs of Wauwatosa, or the countryside of Pecatonica, deserve quality public schools. And local residents, our neighbors, our friends in our local communities, whether they are Republicans, Democrats, or independents, have sent emails, made phone calls, signed postcards, attended hearings, asking our legislators to invest in the future of all of the 870,000 school children in Wisconsin by responsibly investing our financial resources in our local public schools. According to the Wisconsin Budget Project, since 2008, Wisconsin has cut state support for investment in schools by 15% per student, which in inflation-adjusted spending means the state is spending $1,014 less today on each student than compared to 2008. We find this unacceptable. The people of our communities want our legislators to make public education their priority, to accept the responsibility of fairly funding our public schools, and to invest in the future of all of the children of all of the people. Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Dave Palashek, who is the retiring superintendent of Oconto Falls School District. Dave has served public education well over his years, and he has some comments he'd like to share with you.
Thank you, Sandy, and good morning and welcome to the People's House, even though it may not seem that way very often. I'm proud to say I'm the superintendent of Oconto Falls School District, and I stand before you as a 45-year veteran of working in public schools, the last 37 as a school superintendent in Wisconsin. This gives me a perspective which allows me to honestly say I've never seen the lack of support for our public schools in Wisconsin as shown in this budget. I'm not alone in that view, as we're going to hear today. As a former American history and government teacher, I often look to the past for guidance about issues in today's society. It was Thomas Jefferson who wrote, "Every government degenerates when trusted to the rulers of the people alone. The people themselves, therefore, are its only safe depositories. And to render even them safe, their minds must be improved to a certain degree." We can take a number of lessons from that quote. First, the best government cannot rely solely on decisions made by elected officials, but rather on the will of the people. Politics is a participatory sport. In the last few months, we in Wisconsin find ourselves at a place and time in which people have spoken as never before in regard to the education issues in this current budget being considered by our legislator. Time and time again, from every corner of the state, educators, parents, school boards, editorial boards, and many others have voiced their concern with the impact this proposed budget will have on our public schools. Not only have they been individual voices around educational issues, but there has been great collaboration and coalition building as never before in Wisconsin. Jefferson would be proud. Parents are catching on. They have come to the realization that opportunity for students of every background and ability who come to our classrooms each day with great hope and expectations will be diminished if this budget is adopted as proposed. We wrestle with this in the Oconto Falls School District as we understand that not all the teachers who retired or are leaving our district this year will be able to be replaced due to insufficient funding. Jefferson understood that in our society, the best government and overall improved quality of life requires that minds be improved. An educated citizenry continues to be critical to achieving that goal. It seems as if the authors of this budget have turned their back on Jefferson's idealism and the obligation to provide educational opportunities for students in public schools guaranteed in the Wisconsin Constitution. We want to thank those individuals and organizations, some for the very first time, who have stepped forward and joined the chorus in response to what appears to be a blatant assault on public education in Wisconsin, the very heart of our communities. Raising voices of concern took courage, but people are catching on that these are not times to sit on the sidelines. We also want to take this opportunity to thank the legislators who have had the courage to respond to the messages sent by their constituents. It is not too late for other legislators to take heart that message. School may be out for the summer, but the prospects for the start of a brighter school year this fall and for years to come will depend on the decisions made by a few people in Madison in the next several days. The people hope and trust that their voices have been heard. I'd now like to introduce Representative Mandela Barnes, who is a co-author of one of these two bills that we're talking about.
So first of all, I want to thank everybody for being here, from traveling from wherever you come from to be here on this special day to talk about public education. First, I want to acknowledge a number of my colleagues who are here, both in the Senate and the Assembly, who are very supportive of this bill. First, we have Senator Chris Larson right behind me. I'll just go through the names. You can give him a round of applause afterwards. Representative Daniel Reamer, who's also standing with me, Representative Chris Taylor, Senator Janet Bewley, Representative Sandy Pope, Representative Melissa Sargent in the back. I saw Representative Lisa Subeck. I see Senator Kathleen Vinehout. I see Representative Diane Hesselbein. I thought I saw Senator Mark Miller. I think that's everybody. And I want to give myself a round of applause for actually catching everybody in the room. I'm not in a shirt and tie today. I am in a Hawthorne Elementary School T-shirt, which is a school in the district that I represent. A school that faces some challenges, as so many public schools face in inner cities. But the result of those challenges, the reason why we see those challenges, one is funding, two is the number of services that need to be offered to students who see a number of issues that we don't traditionally look at when we look at the realm of education. And it's important that we make sure that we address those issues if we want to be serious about transforming the outcomes of all of our students. So the need to fully fund public education across this state is the most important. If you're not going to do it for these two little guys up here, who are you going to do it for, right? When you look at them and see that they are the future of the state of Wisconsin, how can you say no to fully funding their education? How can you say no to their future? Unfortunately, that's what we've seen for far too long. When we look at access to quality public education, it's a freedom and a right that every child from every corner of the entire state deserves. We need to be able to make sure that they are able to obtain necessary supports. As taxpayers, as citizens of the state of Wisconsin, it's our money and we need it now. Our schools need it now. Our communities need it now. Our children need it now. We are public schools. I'm a public school graduate, very proud of it. I say it as much as I can because it needs to be heard. Unfortunately, the face of public education has been tarnished, has been perverted in such ways that people don't even want to discuss it as they should. But I'm here proudly to say I stand for public education. I couldn't be more proud to stand with the people that I stand with today. People from Milwaukee, Wauwatosa, Middleton, Wausau, everywhere. And what we've seen is severe tears in the fabric of public education, coupled with increased statewide privatization. And let me tell you, if we properly and adequately fund traditional K-12 education, every public school in the state of Wisconsin will be a great school choice. The message is simple and the message is clear. The people have spoken. It is up to my colleagues in the Senate and the Assembly, it is up to the governor to make the right choice, to make the right decision. That right decision is to listen to the people. We're not here because we're funded by some millionaires and billionaires who put together some agenda and said, go out there and make it happen. We're here because this really matters to us. We're here because it matters to our communities. We're here to introduce these two simple bills. These are not controversial bills. These are not partisan bills. They are common sense measures to ensure the public safety. If you look at public safety, it's an issue. When you look at how many people we have in our prisons, how many people weren't able to become adequately educated, it's an issue on so many fronts. When we look at the state of Wisconsin in the next 20 years, if these two simple measures aren't taken into account, who knows where we'll be? We'll be a Alabama or a Mississippi, a Tennessee and Arkansas, a South Carolina. this is Wisconsin. This is a state that I'm proud to live in. It's a state that I'm proud to be a legislator in. It's one that we need to be proud of our public schools. Our public schools do a great job, and as long as we're going to continue down this path, I'm not sure how long we'll be able to say the same thing. So I want to close by saying this message here today, it doesn't stop today. It didn't start today, and it won't finish. We're going to take this message to whoever needs to hear it, all 132 members of the legislature, our one governor, if we can catch him in town. Today starts the path that we fully fund education in the state of Wisconsin. Thank you. So I have to introduce the next speaker, Jill Gaskell, who is a school board member in the Pecatonica Area School District. Did I pronounce that right?
You did.
All right. Thank you.
Hi. On behalf of the Pecatonica Area School District, I would like to thank Senators Chris Larson and Harris Dodd and Representatives Mandela Barnes and Daniel Reamer for introducing this, as well as the many legislators who have signed on to co-sponsor the bills they're introducing today. Let me take a moment to introduce you to the Pecatonica School District. We have 420 students, and we're located about 40 miles southwest of Madison in the beautiful rolling hills of the Driftless area. In the mid-1970s, we consolidated schools in the communities of Hollandale and Blanchardville. Since a school is the heart of a rural community, we decided to keep a school building in each community. So we have one elementary building in one community and a high school and middle school in the other. So we have two buildings to maintain and long bus routes over hilly but very scenic roads. Here is what the Invest Our Children Act and the Special Education Restoration Act will mean to my Pecatonica school. Last year, we had to transfer $50,000 to cover our special education budget. This is $50,000 that was taken from the regular education budget. And while this may not seem like a lot of money to you, it is almost 1% of our total budget. Our school district has been cutting back for 20 plus years since revenue caps were first imposed. And the massive cuts of the past budget, coupled with no allowed increase, even for inflation, means that roofing projects get deferred yet a little bit longer. And it means that the upgrade to our technology infrastructure will have to be put on hold. There are parts of our buildings that have very poor internet connectivity, so our computer carts are useless in some of our classrooms. But the biggest and the saddest part of our financial woes is that we cannot compensate our teachers to the degree they deserve. We have a team of very dedicated, very highly professional teachers and staff, many of whom live in the community and are engaged in community churches, organizations, and activities. These people deserve to be given compensation that reflects the professionals that they are and the excellent work that they do. Instead, we lose young teachers to other school districts who can pay more. The new teacher licensure requirements mean that rural schools like Pecatonica will someday, possibly in the very near future, be stuck with deciding whether we hire someone to be a warm body in front of a classroom or if we drop that course from our course catalog. But what if it's a math teacher? We can't drop math courses. Do we hire someone who's been running an accounting firm for the last 15 years to teach AP calculus? It's not fair to our students. Policy issues should be taken out of this budget and reviewed in the full light of day by the public who have a stake in these issues. And the money needs to be restored so that schools can afford to educate their students in a way that's beneficial to the students and to the future of our state. In Wisconsin, it does matter where you go to school. Education is not equal in our state. The expansion of the private school voucher program included in this budget will hurt rural school districts, even though we have no private voucher schools in our area. It takes millions of dollars off of the top of the education fund and the allotment for public schools gets smaller and smaller. Because the current budget does not provide sufficient funding for the state to meet its constitutional obligation to educate our students, for a district like Pecatonica, the Invest in Our Children Act and the Special Education Restoration Act go a long ways towards helping our school. Thank you. Yes, it's Gaskell, Gaskell. Jill. And next is Joanne Yunke.
Yes, and that's spelled Juhnke. Thanks, Jill. And thank you to everyone for being here. So I work with Wisconsin Family Ties, doing children's mental health related policy advocacy. And for several years now, with Stop Special Needs Vouchers, I've been volunteering with fellow parents of students with disabilities across Wisconsin to stand up for well-funded, inclusive public education. At the heart of so much of what I do are my two delightful daughters, and yes, I'm a proud mama here. So Lydia here at the front of the room, and Miriam, who is at summer school this morning. The fact that Miriam is at summer school is a uniquely American triumph through the promise and protections of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the IDEA. You see, Miriam has complex disabilities, including autism and epilepsy. 4 decades ago, Wisconsin was at the forefront when our country committed to educate everyone, regardless of ability, in our public schools. And it just breaks my heart to see how our state is plummeting from being pioneers in educating students of all abilities to actively undermining those precious commitments and protections. Take special needs vouchers. Take them and throw them out of the state budget. Out of the state budget where they were inserted as a late-night ambush, deliberately excluding parents from the democratic process. Special needs vouchers will siphon crucial resources out of our already underfunded neighborhood schools and into private schools where the IDEA does not apply. Now, so this means that private voucher schools don't have to take children like my daughter. They don't have to have special educators on staff. They don't have to work with parents to create a legally enforceable, individualized education plan. They can expel students without recourse and without due process when things get challenging, send them back to the public schools, who welcome them and educate them, even though the funding can take months to follow. In fact, special needs vouchers could go to schools like Right Step in Milwaukee, recently accused of boot camp abuse of their voucher-funded students. That school's appalling special education philosophy is fall in, shut your mouth, and get started. Can you even imagine? Wisconsin didn't ask for special needs vouchers. Not one Wisconsin disability advocacy organization is in favor. Special needs vouchers must come out of the state budget. So meanwhile, let's talk about that funding. Just look. That chart over there, look at what we've done to special education reimbursement rates since the early 90s. Special education categorical aids have been frozen for years, and we keep falling further behind relative to the needs of our students. We learned just last week that Wisconsin is in a shameful last place when it comes to states that fund special education via reimbursement. We're at the absolute bottom of the barrel, reimbursing at just over 26%. Wyoming reimburses at a full 100%. We've simply got to turn this around. And the Special Education Restoration Act is a great place to start. Taking our rate back up to 33% would provide some much-needed relief for the school districts like Pecatonica we just heard about, but men across the state who have been tearing their hair out, trying to figure out how to meet their obligations to kids like mine. Our families have spoken. Our disability advocacy organizations have spoken. It's time to do the right thing for all our students. Thank you. So our next and final speaker will be Catherine Carley from Green Bay, parent of a student just one grade younger than my Miriam. Catherine?
Good morning. My name is Catherine Carley, and I'm the proud parent of a soon-to-be fourth grader at Aldo Leopold Community School in Green Bay. I grew up in Green Bay, and surprisingly, this is my first visit to my state capital, and it really is an honor to be here today with so many professionals who care so much about the kids of Wisconsin. But still, I never could have imagined that my first visit to my state capital would be to fight for the basic human right for my son to get a quality education in the state of Wisconsin. Never could I have imagined that I'd see state lawmakers work so hard to cut funding to our public schools, only to increase public funding to private schools. Much of that work done behind closed doors with little to no input from parents. Never could I have imagined that I would see our elected officials so publicly devalue the dedication and hard work of our teachers and work to lower our teaching standards to the lowest in the nation. So I've driven here today with my son to visit my state capital for the first time to say to these lawmakers, shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you for not listening to the parents of Wisconsin. For the past several months, parents have called their elected officials. We have emailed, we have attended public forums. And in Green Bay and cities and towns across this state, parents have taken to the streets in support of their public schools, demanding they be fully funded to meet the needs of our communities. The overwhelming majority of people across this state, regardless of political party, have said they do not want private school vouchers. They do not want our public tax dollars being given to private and religious schools that are unaccountable to the public. We have seen the failure of the school voucher experiment and the high cost that too many of our kids have had to pay because of it. We have seen what happens when the local community and democratically elected school board has no control over independent charter schools. And we have told our lawmakers we do not want them to expand the chartering authority so that the will of our community can be overruled by some appointed board. We have told you we want education experts, not politicians, making policy decisions. We have told our lawmakers we do not want policy items in the budget. So why are lawmakers not listening to parents? And who is it they are listening to? Lawmakers say private vouchers are a matter of choice, that they are parent-driven. How can it be parent-driven when the number of parents asking and even applying for private vouchers is down? The parents of Wisconsin have made their choice. We choose for our public dollars to pay for our public schools. Public schools that retain and recruit the best and the brightest teachers out there. We choose for Wisconsin to continue providing a quality public education so that our children can attain quality jobs after graduation. We choose to invest in our children, the future workforce, and the future caretakers of our state. I would like to advise state lawmakers to start listening to parents if they wish to remain in office. Parents in Green Bay and across the state are fully aware of your attempts to take our public tax dollars away from our children for your own private interests. But it is not too late for these lawmakers to do what is right, to do their job. Wisconsin legislators do have a constitutional obligation to fully fund our public schools. The proposed budget spends $2 billion more than the previous one, and yet the education budget proposed by the JFC takes funding away from our public schools and increases property taxes. The people here today have presented a very common sense plan that would increase funding for schools and decrease property taxes. If our lawmakers make smart choices, they can pay for schools that is already in the budget without raising taxes. Stop playing games with our children's education. Education is the #1 priority for parents across Wisconsin. We here call on lawmakers to make it their top priority as well. Thank you for listening.
You bet.
I'd like to thank each of the speakers who shared a portion of their belief and their interest with you today. It is obvious to me that the people have spoken, from north to south, from east to west, in rural, urban, and suburban communities. We ask our legislators to support our great public schools and the 870,000 school children that we are here to advocate for. This concludes our formal remarks today, but we invite members of the press to conduct one-on-one interviews with any of the speakers at the podium or those listed as representatives of their organizations in your press packets. If you were not able to receive a press packet, they are on the chair here at the front of the room, and we encourage you to take one. All of the advocates who are here have expertise in and stories about building local level support for public education. John Peacock of the Wisconsin Budget Project is on hand. John, maybe you should raise your hand. Oh, he's way in the back. He's here. And he can answer specific questions about the budget and how we can fully fund our schools without raising taxes. If you need help identifying any of these representatives, we'll be happy to help you. We encourage those who are here today in support of public schools to turn this press conference into the People's Lobby Day. Take a minute to visit your legislators' offices to let them know why you're here today and share your concerns about the education budget. If you'd like talking points or visual aids, we'll be happy to share those with you, and they are also in the press packets. Finally, we plan to take a few moments before we visit our legislators to personally and publicly thank the many legislators who signed on to co-sponsor the Invest in Our Children Act and the Special Education Restoration Act. We applaud everyone who is standing up for our public schools, and we hope to see a strong showing of bipartisan support for these common sense bills when they come before the legislature. And we hope to see unity on the need to fully invest in our great public schools that are the heart of our communities and the cornerstone of our democracy as lawmakers cast their votes in the 2015-2017 budget. And going forward, I know that we're not going to go away. The people here who stand in support of public schools plan to be actively involved for as long as it takes to get our schools fully funded again. It's not too late to do what's right. Thank you so much for coming.